starting it. That's it.
So we need to get at least one of them that will be good for
Posterity's sake.
what do they call it?
Obituary.
Obituary.
Oh yeah, but don't you think it'll be a little deceptive?
That's okay. What's my pictures are for?
Your dad.
Would you
When you're dead, it doesn't matter, does it?
stay close by so that you can coach me. Tell me the words that I forget.
Try to make
Do
you
we turn the
smile.
music
Yeah,
off?
we'll
No.
try to make it
yeah,
appear
thanks.
somewhat.
Actually, will you turn off the dishwasher too, now that I think about it?
Okay.
All right.
Actually, I can do tricks over here to get you to smile.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
no, just to get me to
Here.
remind me of the words I need,
Oh, I see.
so I have some semblance of competency.
All right.
Now, a friend to the hollows, is
Got
that,
my
Richard.
glasses off.
I don't think so. Maybe, yes.
how are.
Yeah, you look more like Cary Grant that way.
Okay.
All right. You ready? Wow, without your glasses, you look different.
Do I?
I
Do you
guess
want them on
so.
or off?
No, off is fine.
So
I
is
can't-
that
I can't
Jenny's
see
family,
nothing.
return
Yeah.
to the of her, what?
Her. Just everybody related to her. Everybody
Okay.
she's had information about.
How's my tie straight?
It's good. It's good. Okay.
We only see half of it.
All right. I don't know this. Why were you named John?
My mother's brother was named John Wright, and he ran the nursery in American Fork for many years. He was kind of well known throughout the Pleasant Grove, American Fork country. But his name was John Wright, and my mother named me in honor of him or after him.
Uh-huh.
And when I was very little, he gave me $10, which was a lot of money in those days. And my mother put it in the bank for me and kept it for, I don't have any idea what happened to it. But that's where the name came from. That's why my name is John Wright Tyler. You know, I always say that, well, it's my mother's maiden name, which it was.
Yeah.
But
But it was also after your uncle.
her brother's name was John Wright.
Did you have a nickname when you were growing up?
Yes. It's a little embarrassing. My nickname was, I've got to get this right, was Beggar. As somebody who continually importunes for favors.
This is justice for me in a lot of ways because I don't know if you remember this, but my nickname growing up was Mutt. And how I got that nickname is that I had climbed up on the counter and taken out a bottle of vitamin C, which had a candy coating on it, and I had sucked off all of the candy coating and put all of the pills back into the bottle. And you caught me, I guess, just on the last pill. And you said, "Oh, you mutt!" And you put me down on the floor, and ever after I was monikered
Did you
Mutt.
enjoy that?
Not remotely. Not even
You
a
didn't even
little
enjoy
bit.
the taste of the pills.
Oh, the vitamin C, yes, I enjoyed very much. I still remember the taste of it.
But my
and
older
how
brother,
Bitter it got.
he would make fun of me because I would plead with my mother for whatever it was I wanted. So he called me Beggar.
This is
And
fun
he
already.
called me that for years. I mean,
Did
it
he?
was a
Lamont? Yes.
long time. Even my little brother called me that.
Steve was never allowed to call me Mutt. Mutt was reserved only for people who were older than I was and who could beat me up.
Oh, is that right? Steve was he had in a lot of ways he was not free to do what he wanted.
He was,
You're talking about your
somewhat.
little brother, Steve.
yes, a somewhat tortured existence.
Yes.
Where were you born and when?
I was born in Provo, Utah, in a house on First South in Provo, 777 West First South. And for some reason, the hospital was closed the day of my birth, and so my mother delivered me in the living room of that home. That home's still standing, and I drove by there the other day, and the guy says, "Yeah, this house is 50 years old." Well, I'm 72, so it wasn't even a new house when I was born.
Maybe you're younger than you think you are. What day was it? What was
April 30th, 1938. And I've always thought part of my wonderful good fortune in life has been that the house number was 777.
That's why you're so lucky.
an omen?
Describe each of your parents and what you remember most about them.
My father was kind of a nice guy. That the term nice guy fit him very well. He was kind to almost everyone. He used to become aggravated with his children with probably good cause. We did some things that we shouldn't have done, especially he was custodian of the Fourth Ward Church in Provo. And he would give the keys to his sons and say, go clean the church. And so we did, of course. And we got into a little trouble on occasion doing that. But he was really a good guy. He was very fair in administering discipline, which was required.
Regularly.
Yeah, regularly. Thank you.
Would you care to elaborate on any of those references to the Fourth Ward building and
One
the trouble
story
therein?
probably didn't.
Well, if this is being recorded, I think I'll pass.
Oh, tell them the snowball one.
Let's pretend.
Well, that's what I was hoping we would.
Oh,
We'd climb
It's
up on
not
the
being
roof. Let me
recorded.
just say this in passing. We'd climb up on the roof and throw snowballs.
That's it?
at,
The bishop.
Passing cars.
yes.
And were you ever apprehended?
Do you have a record?
Yes.
By.
By my father.
Ah.
Oh, goodness, that's the worst person.
Tell him he worked for the post office.
Yeah, he did work for the post office. You had contact with him then, didn't
Well,
you?
just
I'm talking to my wife Annette.
when I was at BYU as a freshman sophomore, I'd go to the Provo post office, and then I think when I was first married too, and there was this kindly looking gentleman with white hair, and I just would look at him and think he's just a cut above the rest of these employees.
And that was my father.
It's remarkable that they did so well with him just working at the post office. I always remember them being quite well off. Was that just their retirement?
Your mother worked.
My mother worked.
And he was a bank robber.
Yeah.
A cut above
My
all the
mother
other
worked
bank
too.
robbers.
Your mother. Tell me about your mother and what you remember of her. How about, shall I ask another question?
Yes.
Describe the relationship between your father and your mother.
It was very good. He was very devoted to her. He really loved her. That was apparent.
How?
I've often thought, well, he would just in the things that he would do, he would do things to try to make her feel. He always sent her flowers at Easter time. Not sent them, but he would go get them and bring them. Always gave her an Easter lily. I'm probably not the best person to ask about my mother. One thing I do remember about him, I don't remember this, but he lived in southern Arizona, in Thatcher, Arizona. And he came up to BYU, met her there, Miss Wright, and married her. And she persuaded him to stay. It was probably a condition of their marriage. And so as a result, I don't get to live in southern Arizona.
You could go back to your ancestral
I did
roots.
once. Once they took me down to his home.
Yeah.
I remember we got about halfway through Arizona and I told him I wanted to go home and get a drink of water. I was 2 or 3 years
They
old.
were, they knew President Kimball. Is
Yes,
that right?
Yes, he did know President Kimball.
Your
They knew
aunts
Spencer
are
Kimball.
mentioned in his.
Spencer Kimball worked in the bank in Thatcher, and my father would go in occasionally, but he knew him, yeah. And Spencer Kimball knew my Aunt Julia and Aunt Noreen, one of which was his secretary.
Did you go on family vacations? As a
Yes, we
child?
did. Did that frequently. We went, but mostly we went to the southern Utah Canyon, Zions and Bryce, and Capitol Reef.
And you hated it.
No, I loved it. I remember my father took Lamont and me, or Steve and me, I can't remember which, on a trip, just the three of us, one time. And down through that country, Dad loved that country. He really did, because when he was a young man, he would drive up through that country to get to Provo to go to school. He would, and so later on in life, we went down there as vacation trips. It was wonderful. It really was. I loved it. Red Rock country.
Yeah. But you had to sleep on the ground,
Yeah, oh yeah.
which, as an older gentleman, I've heard you vow never to do again.
No, that's right. I've spent a lot of nights in. I did the story wrong. I've spent a lot of. I've never slept in a sleeping bag. Never in my life.
Oh, it was just a cover.
I've spent an awful lot of nights in them, but I've never slept.
Will you take the potatoes out? And if you'd glaze the ham, take the tinfoil off the ham and put the glaze on it, which is on the stove, and then put that in. That needs about 10 minutes.
The double glazing.
The double glazing. Let's see. Do you remember hearing your grandparents describe their lives? Do you remember your grandparents?
No, I only remember one grandparent. That was my mother's mother. Her name was Mary Jane Besant,
Yes, I've heard that name.
and I knew her as a child growing up. She would come and stay with us periodically. Oh, I loved her. She was such a kind, just everything you'd want in a grandmother.
Yeah,
She would come and help around the house, which if she wasn't there,
you
we
had to do.
do. Wash the dishes, you know. She really was. I remember sitting talking to her, and she'd tell me about the days when she was young and some of the stories, some of the things that she did. She grew up in Pleasant Grove, and when she married her husband Hiram Wright, he had several children by a previous wife who had died. And John Wright, the man after whom I was married, was one of those.
Hmm.
And then she had 5 children.
So John Wright was your mother's half brother?
That's correct. Yes, that's right. And her, Mary Jane's children were Clifford and Harold. Lucille was before Harold. Clifford and Lucille, then Harold, and then Emily, my mother, and then Dawn.
Do you remember your uncles and aunts?
Yes, I do. I remember Harold very well. I never did know Clifford. He died before I was born. And remember Lucille very well. He used to go stay at their house because their children were my cousins, and we would stay there and have a lot of fun. I remember Dawn very well.
So you don't remember your great grandparents?
No, not at all. Never did do any of them.
Was there a chore you really hated doing?
Yes, doing the dishes. Washing dishes after dinner, supper. For some reason, which I'm sure has been blown out of proportion over the years, I was one required to do all of that. No one ever in our house, no other person ever washed any dishes except me.
Let me get him a bottle, Annette. That I'm going to